Hello again, fellow audiophiles. I am Wave Theory, and this is the final audio D8000 DC Pro. This is a $4,800 US open back, full size, planar magnetic headphone that has been completely redesigned from the D8000 series. Final's website says the DC in the name stands for Da Capo, which means return to the beginning. So they redesigned the D8000 from the ground up to give you the DC Pro edition that I hold right here in my hands. My rep at Audio 46 sent me a text with a picture of this headphone, and I'm guessing it was probably this exact same unit, and he said, "These are wonderful, I'm sending them to you." And then a couple of days after that, I get a tracking number, and a few days after that, they arrive on my porch. All right, so other than that, Audio 46 has made no attempt to influence my opinion. This is a loan to them. From them, it will be going back very soon. The link where you can buy this in the description below from Audio 46 is an affiliate link. So if you like what I have to say about the D8000 DC Pro and you want to buy it, please consider using that affiliate link and I will get a small kickback. I only use affiliate link money to keep the channel running. This was an interesting review. I learned some interesting things about it. It is a very good sounding headphone. I have some questions on that $4,800 price tag, so let's unpack that right after shameless self-promotion.
Hello. I'm one of the reasons that Wave Theory can't spend all of his money on audio gear. He wants you to know that your support is vital for keeping the channel running. So if you enjoy Wave Theory's bussin' review riz and no-cap review style and want to encourage him to stay in the basement so I don't have to listen to his dad jokes as much, like the video and subscribe to the channel. You can also send him a donation on PayPal or sign up for the Patreon. Links are in the description. Now on to the review.
This is my third final D8000 headphone that I have reviewed. I have previously reviewed the original D8000 Pro and then the D8000 Pro Limited Edition after that. I'll put links to both of those reviews down in the description. So while the DC or Da Capo in there means back to the beginning and Final claims they redesigned this thing from the ground up, I mean, it's still a D8000. Right? It still has the same basic look, the same basic finish, and like the same kind of form factor and structure and all of that. I mean, and it is a good looking, well-built headphone. It is quite comfortable. It does seem a little bit lighter than the D8000s of old. They talk it up being about 120 grams lighter, and I can buy that. I don't have the others to do direct A-B in terms of just feeling the weight of them with me, but I didn't notice any weight problems from the headphone itself either. It's also fairly reasonably comfortable there, but I mean, here's what it looks like on my head and all of that, and it's got a good size adjustment to it, good balance in the clamp and all that. It's fairly comfortable. So again, it may be a completely redesigned unit here, a completely redesigned model, but the more things change, the more they stay the same at the same time there. So it's not that much different in terms of its look and its feel. Now, some specs in it are a little bit different because the impedance on the drivers in this thing are spec'd at 50 ohms with a 90 decibel per milliwatt sensitivity to them. That differs a little bit from the original D8000 Pro anyway, which I believe was 60 ohms and 98 decibel per milliwatt sensitivity. So this one is a little bit lower in impedance, not a ton. Okay, the difference between 50 and 60 ohms in impedance generally isn't huge for most amplifiers that you'll be putting this on up in this price range, but that sensitivity of 8 decibels per milliwatt difference there does mean that this is a little bit more difficult to drive in terms of it does require generally a little bit more current from your amplifier to get to the same sound pressure levels that you were going to get out of the original D8000 Pro. I don't remember exactly what the limited edition specs were on that, but just a few thoughts there on the drivability and all that. So again, it is a planar magnetic headphone, but Final's design ethos on these things has always been kind of to give you a planar dynamic feel while at the same time also giving you a dynamic driver feel in there. And it's just they do that with the geometry and the size of it and the way they build the cup around it and all of that sort of thing. And you know, it'll be up to you whether or not that works for you. I'm just going to comment here on the sound. From a fit and comfort standpoint, one thing that I'll add, and I don't know how well this will show up, is like, for one thing, the ear openings on the pads is not the biggest there is. So I think a lot of listeners should be prepared for a little bit of pad pressure on their earlobes. So while it's technically around the ear, there are some on the ear elements to it in that regard. Now, the pads are very thick and very soft and plush, so I didn't have any comfort issues with that, even with my glasses. Okay, so, but that is just something to be mindful of. Now, the other thing, and this will not show up well on camera because it is just kind of hard to see with the naked eye here, is that there is some damping material over the driver down in there that we can see. And then there is a hole in the damping material that is about the size of a dime, an American dime, I want to say, somewhere right around in that range, where it's like not damped. So like the center of the driver, if you will, there is like just a hole in the damping material. So that's something that I observed looking at it in there down there. Again, I can't really show that well on here. What I might do is try to get a quick photo of that and put that up on the screen for you so you can see what that looks like. All right, but the presentation, at least in terms of opening and the packaging and all of that, this thing comes in a big box. It comes in like a small briefcase type of carrying case, which is the same that Final has done with their D8000s of old. So I'm not going to show that again, but it's basically the same case as previous models. And you really get this nice cable that comes with it. It comes with two cables, actually. Both of them look like this. These are silver-plated copper conductor cables. Sold on their own, I think they are about $600 cables. So these are some of the higher quality and nicest looking cables or stock cables that come with headphones in there. So that's a nice little touch to add to the package there. Okay, this one is 4-pin XLR balanced on the amp end. The other one that comes with it is a 4.4 millimeter Pentacon. This one is about 3 meters long, so that one is on the longer side. Now, it is dual 3.5 millimeter on the headphone end here, but you see that there are these little wings here. It's a locking mechanism where you push these in and then you turn them and it locks into place there. So aftermarket cables for this thing, you're going to have to either get that connector or use a very, very thin barrel to get into the sockets on this thing because of the, I mean, just they have the receptacle for that locking mechanism in there. But the good news is these stock cables are, again, are among the best stock cables that I've gotten for any headphone, regardless of price, right? So, like, you're probably just going to be okay using these stock cables as they are, and unless this just the stiffness and the weight of them get to you, because this XLR version anyway is fairly heavy. It does add a fair amount of weight to the headphone when it's on your head. And I was looping it around my neck and making sure it was sitting on the desk appropriately and all that to relieve some of that weight. So unless that bothers you, you're probably not really going to need to get an aftermarket cable for these. All right, so I mean, that's a lot of the build and like what it is and that sort of thing. I mean, again, the build quality is first rate. The comfort is pretty good. It may be a little bit uncomfortable for people with very large earlobes, but you know, we'll see how that goes in time, whether there are reports problems on that. The packaging is great. The stock cabling is great. Let's start turning our attention to sound. All right, so test gear on this, like the main signal chains that I used to listen to this included the live audio harmony stack of the Harmony DAC and the HP2A amplifier working together. I also used a combination of a Denafrips Pontus 15th Anniversary Edition, which is in for review, through a Hi-Fiman Golden Wave Prelude headphone amp, and then I used both the Lampezator Baltic 3 and the Berkeley Alpha Series 2 routed through my LTA Z10E amplifier as like my high-end signal chain in there. I would have listened to all lossless or high-res FLAC files or DSD files played locally. In the case of FLAC files, I could occasionally stream those from Qobuz through Roon. Roon endpoints generally would have included Sonor Ultra Rendu or Chord 2Go through a 2U DDC in there as well, and then onto the various DACs that I just named. Okay, what did I learn through all of that? let me couch this, and this is going to kind of give away the ball game fairly early on, and that's okay. Let me couch this in reminding you that if you're familiar with my channel and my reviews, last spring, I did, or it was early summer, somewhere in there. Anyway, I did a video about how 2,000 US dollars is kind of becoming the sweet spot in high-end headphones, right? And I say that because at the time of that video, there were like, I have 3 in that units in that video, and then I added a 4th later on in the year of $2,000 headphones. Okay, prices have adjusted just a little bit up and down, but they're still basically $2,000 still. Okay, that all sounded wonderful, and I thought put a real pinch on the top of the line kind of priced units like this one. All right, what does that mean? So the HiFiMan HE1000 SE, the Headphone 2, the Modhouse Tungsten double-sided, and the Dan Clark Audio E3 are all headphones that are right around 2,000 US dollars, and they all sound great. They are all really excellent. And the point that I made in that video is that if you want to go, if any headphone maker wants to introduce a new model to the market that is significantly above $2,000 in price, they're going to have to do something remarkable to be worthwhile to go for over those $2,000 units that I just named. All right, and to my ears, it is very hit and miss in the market as to whether or not any units actually do that. HiFiMan Susvara, Focal Utopia, any of the Utopias, okay, Odyssey LCD5 and all that are like 3 units that pop out in my mind is like they clearly do one or more things better than that $2,000 group, which makes them earn their place in the top of the line high-end headphone market. There are other top-of-the-line units, okay, including the earlier editions of the D8000 Pro line that I have just kind of lukewarm on, and I just don't really see their point going, you know, above those $2,000 units. This one really doesn't move that needle for me very much on there. This is a very good headphone, and I'll talk about its sound profile here in a little bit more detail in a moment. Sorry for bumping the camera there. Okay, but I'm finding the $4,800 price tag difficult to justify because I don't think it really gets the performance. There's not the performance gap that there needs to be over those $2,000 units that I just named. All right. Let me flesh all of this out a little bit further here. And again, you don't have to agree with me. So if you think the D8000 Pros are great and you're excited about this one and you want to know what I think it sounds like and if it's of interest to you, I am going to go into the details here. But that's kind of my takeaway on the sound here. So, a mostly neutral tuning, a little bit mid-centric. It has, in terms of its perceived frequency response, it has that kind of Japanese-style tuning to it still. Final is a Japanese company, so that makes sense, right? So it is a little bit mid-forward. It's got a little bit more perceived energy in the mids and in the treble than it does in the low end. Now, Finals of old have had some of the best sounding electric bass guitar sounds that I've ever heard in terms of like the accuracy of just making an electric bass guitar sound like a real electric bass guitar. They really stood out to me on that one. This one not as much in that department, although it's still quite good. Right? It didn't stand out to me anymore as like that was a really big feature of the sound in it. Okay, but this one, that mid-centricness is a little more under control than the previous D8000s were, at least to my ears and to my memories. The previous D8000s were too far forward in the mids, where they often sounded very shouty, honky, hollow, and nasally to me. This one has elements of that, and again, it still kind of has that Japanese flavor to the tuning, but it's not as extreme as the earlier D8000s were, and it's certainly not as extreme as something like an Audio-Technica Narukami ATH AWKG, okay, up in that price range as well. All right, so I could handle the mid-range tone and timbre on this one better than I could most finals before it. Okay, but it's still definitely there's a mid bump in there that to my ear is above neutral. And again, I will wave the flag here that I know that I'm a bit mid-range sensitive on that. So that's something to keep in mind there. But most of the time I could tolerate it, but there were also times where it just got very overwhelming and fatiguing for me there. Treble tonality is fairly well balanced. Cymbals sounded pretty natural and all of that too. I don't have very many complaints about the treble presentation. The bass, I think, is just a little bit lean, but I mean, what's there again is of pretty high quality, just maybe not quite as stand out to me as previous D8000. So there, overall, in terms of perceived frequency response and all that, there were some trade-offs to my ears on how they have done the presentation here. Hey, as I've just laid out. Detail retrieval and resolution are also good, but just not elite. I think it does lag behind some other members at its price point, and it certainly doesn't clearly separate itself to my ear over that group of $2,000 units that I named earlier in terms of resolution, detail retrieval, texturing, soundstage holography, and like all of that kind of stuff. It is solid in all of those categories. It may just edge out some of those $2,000 units, but it's not like clearly better than them in the way that things like original Hi-Fi Vara or the Focal Utopia series, or those kinds of things up there, or I have it at, where is it right now? ZMF Caldera Open. Okay. Like those to me have some clear advantages over those $2,000 units in those categories. This one, not as much. Okay, so again, and then the dynamics I found to be just a little bit like they're not terrible. They're not necessarily lacking, but the physicality and the energy to the sound to me just is a little bit just so-so, right? I wish that it had a little bit more active and lively kind of presentation to it and all of that. Now, I generally didn't find it to strongly prefer any one music genre over another. It just kind of was itself with the wide variety of genres I tried, anything from like classical all the way up through heavy metal and just about everything in between. So I just, it's got that going for it. But it also picked up on a little bit of signal chain pickiness here. Unsurprisingly, it responded the best to my LTA Z10E amp that was fed by either the Lampesator Baltic 3 or the Berkeley Alpha Series 2. Most headphones do, because that's the best signal chain that I have on hand to throw at headphones. Okay, but the behavior of it wasn't just that it was itself and then got better on that chain. It's that like some of that mid-range forwardness that I mentioned was a little more pronounced, and the mid-range just had like a little bit of extra grain to it when it was on the the one that stands out is the Pontus 15th through the Prelude there. There's just a little bit more graininess to the mid-range and a little bit more forwardness to that mid-range too. In there, and then also I thought the treble was not as smooth and it was like peaky, a little bit more shrill and fatiguing on that signal chain. The live harmony stack, which I think sounds pretty solid together and one of the better options for amp and DAC together at the combined price right there, is like just a little bit too dynamically flat too. Don't remember quite the peakiness or FR issues that I heard with the Pontus and the Prelude, okay? But the live harmony stack, it just sounded a little bit flat and dull to me. It needed a little bit more life to the sound, and that's not something that I observed with that stack together with a lot of other headphones, like the Utopia, the Caldera, the HE1000 SE, the E3. Like those all have some nice life to them on that live harmony stack, which this one, the D8000 DC Pro here, just sounded a little bit flat to me from that one. So I think from a synergy standpoint, you're going to have to pay attention a little bit to signal chains and all of that there. But even when I could direct compared this one to my, come here, OG Susvara, my original Focal Utopia, which is over there off camera, the ZMF Caldera, which I have in for review, or even the original HE1000 SE, Okay, which is still one of my favorite headphones, the Dan Clark E3, which is over on my listening table there. And then, I mean, I also have this one in now, the HE1000 Unveiled from Hi-Fi-Man and all that. Like, in comparison to all of those, I just find this one to be a little bit lacking, honestly. Just, it doesn't move me in the way that those others do. It doesn't engage me in the way that those others do. So I think I'll just go ahead and leave it there. Again, it is a very good, very solid headphone. I think $4,800 is just too much for the overall package you get here sonically. I could see this being a $2,800 to $3,000 package just because you get two really nice cables that come with it that are like, you know, $600 a pop on their own. Okay, but again, I'm not getting the return on investment from this one that above and beyond that group of $2,000 headphones that I've been naming here, and at least not in the same way. That's the Svaro Utopia. You know, the Caldera is better than this one. I'm not sure how much better yet. I'm still working on that one, and so forth. But I mean, I think I've made the point here, and I'm probably just getting a little bit repetitive, so I'm going to stop. So, I'm Wave Theory. Thanks for watching my review of the final D8000 DC Pro. Please remember to like, subscribe, and comment. If you haven't checked out my PayPal or my Patreon yet, please do so. And as always, enjoy the music.